There is a woman in the photograph.
Not always, not obviously, but she's there, in the background of family outings, in the edge of shots taken during Majorca summers, beside the two young girls in a car after an evening of sailing. Royal watchers in Spain have spotted her across years of coverage, noted her presence in forums and fan sites, built quiet theories about who she might be. They've compared photographs. They've zoomed in. They've asked each other the question that the palace has never answered, because the palace has never been asked it officially, because officially this woman does not exist in any document that the Spanish royal household has ever released. She has no name in the public record. No title. No biography. No confirmed nationality beyond what has been widely reported secondhand, that she is British. She has never given an interview. She has never been introduced at a ceremony. She does not appear in the official communications of the Casa Real. She is, by every institutional measure, nobody. And yet, Princess Leonor of Asturias, the 20-year-old woman who will almost certainly one day be Queen of Spain, speaks English. Not just conversationally, fluently, confidently, with the particular ease of someone who didn't learn a language in a classroom but absorbed it the way children absorb language when they are very young and the person speaking it is someone they love. She spoke it publicly in Barcelona at 13, as one of 4 languages in a speech that stunned the audience by its command. She spoke it at the United World College Atlantic in Wales for 2 years, in a country where Spanish was the foreign language and English was simply the medium of daily life, and she moved through it without visible difficulty from the first day. Her English did not come from school. It did not come from formal lessons. It came, the record is clear on this, from 2 sources: her paternal grandmother, Queen Sophia, who spent enough time in the United Kingdom to pass fluency to her grandchildren almost incidentally. And from her British nanny. That is all we know. That is all the palace has ever allowed us to know. A British nanny, present from early childhood, unnamed, unacknowledged, invisible in every official record of the most carefully documented young royal in Spain's modern history. This is the story of that woman. Or rather, since the story of that woman is one the palace has chosen to withhold, this is the story of what her namelessness means, what her presence built, and why the most consequential figure in Leonor's private formation might be the one person in it that Spain has never been introduced to. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what a nanny actually is, not the caricature version, not the British movie version with a carpet bag and an umbrella, but the developmental reality of what it means to have a consistent, attentive adult in a child's life from very early on. Developmental psychology is fairly clear about the architecture of early attachment. Children form working models of the world, templates for how relationships function, how adults behave, how trust is built and maintained, based on their earliest, most repeated interactions with caregivers. Parents are the primary architects of this, obviously. But a nanny who is present daily, who handles the morning routines and the afternoon chaos and the bedtime rituals, who is a consistent physical and emotional presence across the years when the brain is doing its most formative work, that person is not secondary. That person is structural, and Leonor's nanny was speaking to her in a second language. Think about what that means, neurologically and experientially. Language is not just vocabulary and grammar. Language is a framework for thought. Each language a child acquires carries with it a set of cultural assumptions, rhythms of communication, ways of organizing the world. Children who grow up bilingual don't simply have access to 2 sets of words for the same things, they have access to 2 slightly different ways of processing experience. The English that Leonor learned from her nanny was not the English of a textbook. It was the English of daily life, domestic life, the life of breakfast and gardens and games and the small negotiations of childhood. It was relational English, learned in the context of trust. The woman who gave her that is unknown. The palace has never said her name. Compare this to the British royal family's equivalent arrangement. Prince George and Princess Charlotte of Wales have a nanny, Maria Teresa Turrion Borrello, a Spanish woman from Zamora who trained at the Norland College in Bath and has been with the family since 2014. She has been photographed extensively. She has been written about in detail. Her training, her nationality, her background, all of it is documented and widely known, not because she sought attention but because the palace, or at least the royal press operation, simply didn't suppress it. She's been seen at polo matches, at school drop-offs, at public events. She's part of the visible life of the family. Spain's British nanny is the inverse of that. Present across years of coverage. Spotted in photographs by dedicated royal watchers who have squinted at the same images from different angles trying to confirm the same woman appears across different years. Never introduced. Never named. Never acknowledged. The asymmetry is strange when you notice it. Britain's heir has a publicly known Spanish nanny. Spain's heir has a completely anonymous British one. Why the difference? The honest answer is probably several reasons layered over each other, none of them sinister. Spanish royal communications have always been more controlled and less conversational than British ones. The Casa Real operates on a more formal model of official silence, releasing what it chooses to release and declining to engage with the rest. The nanny is private staff, and private staff are private. There may be a contractual arrangement. There may simply be a philosophy, shared by Felipe and Letizia, that the domestic interior of their family's life is not the palace's to give away. But there's something else too. Letizia, in particular, has been meticulous about the presentation of her children as grounded, ordinary, unprecious. A woman who grew up as the daughter of a nurse in Oviedo, who worked as a television journalist before she became a princess, who was photographed doing her own grocery shopping in the early days of her marriage with a clear deliberateness. This is a woman who has spent 20 years constructing a very specific image of the monarchy as accessible, human, connected to real life. A publicly known British nanny, with a name and a background and a Norland uniform, would complicate that image. It would make the domestic interior of the palace look like what it is, a staffed, institutional environment. Which it is. But the image requires something else. And so the woman remains unnamed. Spotted but not identified. Present in the photographs and absent from the record. What did she give Leonor, beyond the English? This is where the speculation becomes unavoidable, but it's grounded speculation, based on what we know about what nannies give. She gave her, almost certainly, the experience of a close adult relationship with someone who was not her parent and not Spanish and not royal. A person from a different country, with a different set of assumptions about the world, who was present in the most intimate domestic spaces of Leonor's childhood, the nursery, the kitchen, the garden, the car. Who spoke to her every day in a language that wasn't the language of the palace or the country she would one day rule. Who was, in some fundamental sense, a window. The first window Leonor had, before Wales, before the UWC, before the Juan Sebastián de Elcano and 17,000 nautical miles of open ocean, into the fact that the world she was born into was not the only world there was. We know that Leonor arrived in Wales in September 2021 and functioned. She didn't struggle with the language or the culture in the way that a sheltered heir dropped into a foreign country for the first time might. She attended a school where her classmates came from over 90 countries, where English was the medium of instruction and daily life, and she was, by all accounts, a fully present participant from the beginning. That didn't happen because of 2 years of school English lessons. It happened because English was already, for her, a domestic language. A language she had spoken since childhood in the company of someone she trusted. A language that had feelings attached to it before it ever had formal grammar. The nanny made Wales possible. And Wales made the military academies possible, in the sense that Wales was the first real test of Leonor's ability to function outside the palace as a person rather than as a princess, to live communally, to navigate peer relationships without the asymmetry of title, to be assessed by strangers on her own terms. And the military academies, by her own account and the accounts of everyone who observed them, made something else in her possible. The capacity to be Midshipman Bourbon Ortiz, nobody's heir, one of 76 people on a ship with a bunk and a watch schedule in the Atlantic between her and every comfortable thing she'd ever known. That chain, nanny, English, Wales, Zaragoza, the Elcano, is not inevitable. It was built, link, by decisions that began with a British woman in a room in the Zarzuela Palace speaking to a very small child in a language the child was only just beginning to understand. There is something philosophically interesting about the way institutions handle the people who actually form their most important members. The Spanish monarchy has spent enormous institutional energy on the visible architecture of Leonor's preparation. The official communications, the approved photographs, The carefully worded speeches, the announced milestones, the saber ceremony, the flag oath, the parliamentary proclamation on her 18th birthday. All of it documented, managed, released. A meticulous public record of a future queen being built. And running alongside it, for the entirety of Leonor's life, invisible to that record, a woman whose daily presence shaped the most private and foundational aspects of who Leonor is. Not a general or an admiral or a constitutional scholar. A nanny, with a name that the palace has chosen not to say. Letitia's own mother, Paloma Roque Solano, is a nurse from Oviedo who raised 3 daughters with her husband Jesus, a journalist, in a household that had nothing to do with palaces or titles or dynasties. Paloma Roque Solano is Leonor's maternal grandmother, and she has appeared at some public events, and there is a version of this essay that is about her, about the nurse from Asturias who is a structural fact in the making of Spain's future queen. But Paloma is at least known. She has a name in the record. She is part of the story the family tells about itself, the story of the middle-class journalist who became a queen and brought her ordinary roots with her. The nanny has no such story. Or rather, she has a story, but it isn't the palace's to tell, and the palace hasn't told it. There is a moment that royal watchers who follow the Spanish family closely have discussed for years. During a summer in Majorca, there is a photograph taken after an evening of sailing, the girls and their grandmother Queen Sofia getting into a car together. Between them, clearly present, clearly comfortable, clearly part of the moment rather than observing it, is a woman. Not a security detail, not a lady in waiting. A woman sitting between Leonor and Sofia in the way that someone sits between children they know very well. The photograph is not official. It was taken at a distance, in the candid way that summer photographs of the royal family sometimes escape the controlled perimeter of official coverage. And the woman in it, the same woman spotted in other photographs over other years, according to those who have looked carefully, is the closest thing anyone outside the palace has to a sighting of the person this video is about. She's blurred by distance. She's turned slightly. You cannot see her face clearly. She is, in the photograph, exactly what she has been in the official record for 2 decades, present and unnamed. What do you call the influence of someone like that? Not mentorship, that implies a formal relationship with a purpose. Not friendship, the relationship between a nanny and a royal child is defined by care, not equality. Something closer, in developmental terms, to the ground floor. The relationship that happens before the child has the capacity to understand they're in a relationship. The attachment that forms before the language the nanny is teaching them, even. Leonor speaks 5 languages. The English in that list is different from the others. The others, French, Arabic, Catalan, Galician, Basque, were studied. Acquired through instruction, through deliberate educational choice, through the gradual formal process of adding languages to a curriculum. English was given, spoken into her ear by a British woman in the nursery before she understood what it meant, before she understood that this was a different language from the one her parents spoke, before she understood anything at all except that this was the voice of someone who cared for her. That is not a school subject. That is a relationship. And the person at the center of it has no name in any document the Spanish royal household has ever released. Spain is preparing itself, slowly, for Leonor. The coverage has been building for years, the military training, the naval voyage, the oath, the upcoming university studies in political science at Carlos III University in Madrid. The country is watching a future queen being made in real time, or at least the official version of it, the version the palace has decided to show. It is a carefully managed process of introduction, designed to produce a specific result, a citizenry that knows Leonor, trusts Leonor, is ready for Leonor. And in none of that official introduction is the British nanny. Not because she isn't real. Not because her influence isn't real. But because the palace has decided, whether deliberately or by simple institutional default, that the domestic interior of a future queen's childhood is private. That the people who formed her in her most private moments are not the public's business. There is a reasonable argument for that position. And there is another argument, the one this essay is quietly making, that the people we don't see are often the ones who matter most. That the official record of Leonor's formation, impressive as it is the surface. That underneath it, unacknowledged by any press release, is a woman who spoke English to a child in a palace in Madrid and gave that child a window that would one day lead to Wales and Zaragoza and the South Atlantic. We don't know her name. We don't know where in Britain she's from. We don't know how old she was when she arrived at the palace, or what she studied, or what she made of the job. We don't know whether she's still in contact with the family, or whether the arrangement ended years ago, or whether somewhere in Britain right now there is a woman who helped raise the future Queen of Spain and has never told anyone. We know only that she was there. That she spoke English to a small girl every day. That the small girl grew up and went to Wales and then to the army and then to the navy and then to the air force and one day will be queen. And that the English she carries, confident, fluent, relational, the kind that doesn't feel like a second language at all, is the echo of those early conversations. Someone built that in her. Someone whose name the palace has never said. Whoever she is, she changed everything.